Welcome to my library. I want to share 4 books with you today. You start. I'm gonna be nervous anymore. Phew. Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to share 4 books with you today. One that I'm actively reading by listening to. There's an audiobook version on YouTube, so if you're interested, I recommend checking it out. You can listen to the full thing. It's Island by Aldous Huxley. And I want to make some weird connections between this book, Alice in Wonderland, and this one recently given to and this one from a colleague, Girdle. You have to pronounce it Girdle Escherbach. Let's go. Okay, page 328. Yeah. There was a whirring sound. From the shallows, a bubble of recognition reached the surface of consciousness. Susila had been putting a record on the turntable of a phonograph, and now the machine was in motion. Johann Sebastian Bach, he heard her saying. The music that's closest to silence. Closest in spite of its being so highly organized to pure 100% proof spirit. The whirring gave place to musical sounds. Another bubble of recognition came shooting up. He was listening to the 4th Brandenburg Concerto. It was the same, of course, as the 4th Brandenburg he had listened to so often in the past. The same and yet completely different. This Allegro, he knew it by heart, which meant that he was in the best possible position to realize that he had never really heard it before. To begin with, it was no longer he, William Asquith Farnaby, who was hearing it. The Allegro was revealing itself as an element in the great present event, a manifestation at once removed of the luminous bliss. Now this is Huxley. Or perhaps that was putting it too mildly. In another modality, this Allegro was the luminous bliss. It was the knowledgeless understanding of everything apprehended through a particular piece of knowledge. It was undifferentiated awareness broken up into notes and phrases and yet still all comprehendingly itself. And of course all this belonged to nobody. It was at once in here, out there, and nowhere. The music which, as William Asquith Farnaby, he had heard 100 times before, he had been reborn as an unknown awareness, which was why he was now hearing it for the first time. Unowned, the 4th Brandenburg had an intensity of beauty, a depth of intrinsic meaning, incomparably greater than anything he had ever found in the same music when it was his private property. Poor idiot, came up in a bubble of ironic comment. Will Farnaby is tripping. The writing just gets really, what's the word?
Really,
In the eternity that was as real as shit. That's how the sentence starts. In the eternity that was as real as shit.
He went on listening to these interwoven streams of sound, went on looking at these interwoven streams of light, went on actually being, out there, in here, and nowhere, all that he saw and heard. And now abruptly the character of the light underwent a change. These interwoven streams, which were the first fluid differentiations of an understanding on the further side of all particular knowledge, had ceased to be a continuum. Instead, there was, all of a sudden, this endless succession of separate forms, forms still manifestly charged with the luminous bliss of undifferentiated being, but limited now, isolated, individualized. Silver and rose, yellow and pale green and gentian blue, an endless succession of luminous spheres came swimming up from some hidden source of forms and, in time with the music, purposefully constellated themselves into arrays of unbelievable complexity and beauty. An inexhaustible fountain that sprayed out into conscious patternings, into lattices of living stars. And as he looked at them, as he lived their life and the life of this music that was their equivalent, they went on growing into other lattices, that filled the three dimensions of an inner space and changed incessantly in another timeless dimension of quality and significance. "What are you hearing?" Cecilia asked. "Hearing what I see," he answered, "and seeing what I hear." "And how would you describe it?" "What it looks like," Will answered after a long silence. "What it sounds like is the creation, only it's not a one-shot affair. It's non-stop, perpetual creation." "Perpetual creation out of no what, nowhere, into something somewhere. Is that it?" "That's it."
So now I'm skipping ahead to page 339. He's still on this trip. And all the while, fiddle, flute, and harpsichord, the final presto of the Fourth Brandenburg, kept trotting timelessly forward. What a jolly little Rococo death march. Left, right, left, right. But what was the word of command for hexapods? And suddenly they weren't hexapods any longer, they were bipeds. The endless column of insects had turned abruptly into an endless column of soldiers, marching as he had seen the brown shirts marching through Berlin a year before the war. Thousands upon thousands of them, their banners fluttering, their uniforms glowing in the fertile brightness like floodlit excrement, numberless as insects, and each of them moving with the precision of a machine, the perfect docility of a performing dog. And the faces, the faces. He had seen the close-ups on the German newsreel, and here they were again, preternaturally real and three-dimensional and alive. The monstrous face of Hitler with his mouth open, yelling. And then the faces of assorted listeners, huge idiot faces, blankly receptive, faces of wide-eyed sleepwalkers, faces of young Nordic angels wrapped in the beatific vision, faces of Baroque saints going into ecstasy, faces of lovers on the brink of orgasm, one folk, one realm, one leader, union with the unity of an insect swarm, knowledgeless understanding of nonsense and diabolism. And then the newsreel camera had cut back to the serried ranks, the swastikas, the brass bands, the yelling hypnotist on the rostrum. And here once again, in the glare of his inner light, was the brown insect-like column, marching endlessly to the tunes of this Rococo horror music. Onward, Nazi soldiers! Onward, Marxists! Onward, Christian soldiers and Muslims! Onward, every chosen people, every crusader and holy war maker! Onward into misery, into all wickedness, into death! And suddenly Will found himself looking at what the marching column would become when it had reached its destination. Thousands of corpses in the Korean mud, innumerable packets of garbage littering the African desert. And here, for the scene kept changing with bewildering rapidity and suddenness, here were the 5 fly-blown bodies he had seen only a few months ago, faces upwards and their throats gashed, in the courtyard of an Algerian farm. Here, out of a past almost 20 years earlier, was that old woman dead and stark naked in the rubble of a stucco house in St. John's Wood. And here, without transition, was his own gray and yellow bedroom, with the reflection in the mirror on the wardrobe door of 2 pale bodies, his and Babs frantically coupling to the accompaniment of his memories of Molly's funeral and the strains from Radio Stuttgart of the Good Friday music out of, I can't pronounce that last word. So the interesting connection that I wanted to share with you, I'm listening to the audiobook Island, and the name Bach is mentioned, and I just so happen to have received this book, Escher Bach, and I've been reading it a little bit. The writer Douglas Hofstadter references Alice in Wonderland a lot. One of my favorite books. 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. That's the literary 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon that happens up here.
Why don't you try another piece of mushroom? Careful, not the whole mushroom.